Hey everybody, welcome back. This is the next episode of Authors Bantering. In this week, we're actually going over recovery. Kind of a topic that me and Ian were discussing after last week's video, because yes, we talked about routines and sort of pursuing your goals, but very rarely is the idea of recovery talked about. It's kind of like the yin to the yang energy, if you think about it, right? You have all this focus on drive, getting the story out there, getting your routine down, hustling. But how do you not get burnt out? How do you as a writer show up every day ready to do your best? And with that, hopefully this video will help you out here, just that way you don't get into February with your new writing goals planned out and all of a sudden hit the wall. Last week, obviously, me and talked about the fact that we're pretty consistent. We basically write very consistently every single week, and we put out a lot of hours into it. And so I know for me, this is honestly more important than the writing itself. Like being able to actually recover and come to the page every single day is more important than actually showing up at all. Because anybody in theory can just show up, right? Anybody can show up to the computer and you can start writing. But if your mind's foggy, if you're tired, if you're not feeling it, quite frankly, your output's going to be terrible. And this is often why people tend to put off sessions. They tend to avoid writing. They tell themselves, I'm not feeling good today. The writing's not going to be good today. And so they avoid it, right? They avoid doing the work because they know they're at their best. And so I guess I'll start with you, Ian, first. How do you find that you're able to avoid the burnout and kind of come to the page, at least with a good chance that you're going to put out some of your best work?
Yeah, and again, I'm really glad we're talking about this because I think this doesn't get talked about enough. I think when I was younger, I did used to, write for larger chunks of time. I do 5, 6, 7 hours sometimes, and just like write for, a whole day sometimes. And then I would also, write multiple days and get really, really engrossed into a project and sometimes stay up late. And then I'd be low on sleep or I'd be, tired, from work or from other things, or, it would turn into this big ball of stress sometimes. And over time, I was able to identify this pattern and learn to pace myself a little bit better. I still fall into that trap sometimes with kind of overscheduling my writing time. But now I think I'm a lot better at it. For me, I think the time in between writing sessions is very important to both to separate myself from the project and not think about it. And then this also, gives my unconscious mind a little bit more time to kind of work out some problems and maybe get some new ideas, figure out how to structure a scene or maybe how some dialogue should sound or how to solve a problem. I might think about these things, not intensely throughout the day or the evening, but they'll be in the back of my head. If I get an idea for something, I'll try and jot it down in a notebook, or depending on the idea, I'll just remember it. But the key is to be doing non-writing things.
Okay.
And for me, ideally this would take the form of, relaxing, reading a book, listening to music, going for a walk, or seeing something, going somewhere interesting. More often in the real world, this takes the form of doing other kinds of work.
Yep.
Which is, for me, not ideal. But if it's not writing work, it's still not as intense as using that writing part of my brain. So it still is a kind of rest and a kind of recovery because I'm not engrossed in the project for 6 or 8 hours a day, like I would when I was younger. And so I guess just to sum up, it's this idea that, you have to be doing non-writing things throughout the day to separate yourself from this very, very intense process so that when you go to your next day, your next session, you can enter, with a clean frame of mind, having had that rest.
Now, do you have a certain habit with that? Like, it's something where after I'm done writing for the day, I'll go for the walk. Then I'll spend maybe a couple hours reading. Do you have a certain kind of set routine with that?
In the real world, my routine is very, 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 very small. I'll get up from my chair and I'll move to a different point in the room, to a different chair, lay down. My old office had a couch in it, so I used to lay on the couch. I'll use a beanbag chair now, and I'll just sort of de-stress, unwind from the very intense process of thinking about this thing that I've been writing. And usually I'll do it with eyes closed. Sometimes I'll reach for my phone, although I really try not to do that. But yeah, the goal is to just take this couple of minutes to distance myself from writing and kind of form a transition into whatever else I'm doing that day, even if it's, taking lunch or something like that to so I'm not just dashing from writing into something else that's very focused and intense.
Okay. Gotcha.
How
So
about you? You do something like that if you finish a writing session?
I'm a little bit different. Yeah. So for me, it's a little bit different. Like the main thing, as far as like finish up a session, I go right to work. So pretty much it's me. Once I'm done, I'm at work. And then really throughout my day, unless I am stuck on a problem, I try to avoid thinking about writing at all. I do my best. It's not unavoidable, but unless I'm stuck on something, if it's something where I have writer's block and it's like, all right, the scene's not working, I got to replace it with another scene, or I got to show this thing I want to show in a different way. I'll play with that idea like throughout my day. I'll drive with the radio off and kind of just think thoughts, whatever. So I'll try to work it out. But for the most part, once I'm done with writing, I do try to shut that out. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. And then really when I'm home in the evenings, my evening routine is kind of structured in a way that allows me to write in the mornings, where I tend to unwind. I don't plan out a whole lot in my evenings. It's more or less just unwinding. It's taking it easy. It's dinner, hanging out with my wife. It's oftentimes if I'm doing any kind of leisure at all, it's some TV occasionally, but for the most part, I'm either reading or listening to some sort of podcast. And then basically I'm asleep by like 9-10 o'clock or so, like basically so I'm getting like 8 to 7 hours of sleep and up basically in the morning ready to go. If it was something where I was being exciting, in my personal life where I was going out till like, midnight, 1 a.m. and coming home, I wouldn't be able to write. I couldn't get my stuff done at 5 a.m. because I don't operate in that kind of sleep. It kind of goes, I'm not sure who said this. I'm gonna say Douglas Adams said this quote, but I might be wrong. But there's a famous quote by an author that basically was like, your creative life is equal to how boring your real life is. In other words, all of your fun and excitement should be in your work. You should write really fun and exciting things, but your personal life should be boring as can be, because you need the boring life to sort of give a foundation to allow you to be as creative as possible on the page. It's a very, very yin yang kind of thing here. You can't really be the wild sort of rock star person anymore and expect to put out this really good content. It's kind of rare that someone can do that. And so for me, that's how I tend to structure my life. It's very much around the writing side of things, where it's writing all out, all my mind, energy, all that, right into my writing. Rest of the day, it's slowly just doing other things, trying to avoid that and really trying my best to recover, just so that way the next morning get up and I can at least probably have a good chance of getting the writing done.
Yeah, I think that, the Douglas Adams or whoever said that quote, I think that speaks to really an issue that I have struggled with throughout a lot of my writing life, and I think a lot of people struggle with, but maybe don't have a name for, and that's fitting in everything that you want to do throughout the day or the week or the month or the year. And the idea that, going out, having fun, having an active social life, doing exciting things, living your life, is just one more thing that has to be done, just like writing. And the idea that, because, we have things like day jobs and family responsibilities and other things that we're doing, writing and that social time is competing for the same few hours per day or per week sometimes. And the idea that in a lot of ways, like unless you don't have a day job or unless you figured out another way to free up time during the day, those two things can often be mutually exclusive. You can't have both, and that's that can be really, really hard in a lot of ways, because I love going out. I love having fun. I love meeting people and being social and doing fun things at night. It was really important to me for a long time. I do a lot less of that now, and I think it was my doing a lot less of that. It was in direct correlation to me getting more serious about my writing, so that it became less about directly saying no to social endeavors and just sort of naturally steering away from them because I wanted to focus on my writing.
Yeah, and stability is really important too. Like the more, as you just said, like the more stable you get, the more serious you are about being a good writer. It's the more chaotic your life is, the more chaotic and sporadic your writing sessions are. It all kind of leads back to the idea of unimportance, right? If something's really important to you, it's going to be consistent in your life. It's going to be something that's going to be very, very stable, and you're going to build things around that make sure it's stable, which is really what this whole I guess this whole video is about, is the idea of recovery, right? It's about the idea of keeping your personal life to a degree of stability as best you can, so that way you can go and you can write. It's, again, if you're going out and you're partying every single night and expecting to put out your best work, it's not going to happen. It's just rare. It's rare to find that. And so having that stability, having basically a life that's a lot more calm and sort of tranquil, to be able to build a foundation where you can actually go to the computer every single day and not be thinking about all the stresses and worries and financial problems and the fight you had with your boss, fight you had with your spouse, etc. Every single time you're at that keyboard, right, and you have your mind somewhat clear so you can focus on the project ahead of you, that is like paramount. Like, if you can't do that, if you cannot sit at the computer and just think your story, not and be able to fight those other thoughts and worries off, that's going to be very challenging. To put out your best work is going to be very, very difficult. And the best way to do that really is to focus on having that stability, in your life as best you can there. Perhaps things like meditation as well to help you maybe control some of your thoughts and all that. But really, just having a stable life, I think, is the most important recovery tool for a writer.
I was gonna say, I feel like you beat around this, but didn't actually say it. Just the idea of rest,
Yeah.
just rest and relaxation, I think, is so important. And this includes sleep, but it also includes kind of doing nothing time. Like unwinding. I do a lot of unwinding before bed, or kind of I'll during lunch, throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just take take some zone out time, and especially add it up. This can take up a good chunk of time throughout the week, but it's very necessary time, because it's the recovery time, it's the relaxation, it's the separation, it's the sleep, that gives you more energy. And so again, just the reason we're talking about this, like, if you're trying to make time in your schedule for writing, don't forget to make time for rest and recovery as well.
Bingo. Yeah. But excellent. So with that, that's basically our routines. It's, again, recovery is not something that's ever talked about with writing. Recovery, you hear a lot about athletic endeavors, things that actually require a lot of physical exertion. But writing being a mental game also requires that. Don't downplay the need to actually take time away and to actually recuperate and be ready for your next writing session. And so if you did find this helpful, please make sure to give it a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe. And with that, we are back on Mondays. So with that, we will see you next week. I'm Josh Breslin, that's Ian M. Rogers, and we will see you next time.
Take it easy.